5, 6, 7, 8. Fast pace. And 2.
Well, now you're going to do a dance count.
I know. Sometimes you just got to go into the dance. Hi, everybody. This is the Smart and Public podcast. It's a podcast that discusses careers, life, and business, and like just other things as well, from public relations and communications, people's perspectives. Well, that was really hard to spit out. You know what? It's not going to be perfect every time. So, everyone, let's just roll with it. I'm Katie Boysen.
And I'm Katie Dufficy. At least you know it's not a pre-record. Voice every time.
Exactly.
I know. I'm impressed.
Oh,
Yes,
there's a voice on the podcast with us today. I'm so excited. We have a guest with us today, which is our favorite episodes to do rather than just Boysen and I talking shit.
I'm sure other people love it more too.
I'm sure they do. I'm sure they do. And we're so happy to have this guest on because it's actually a first for us. We've had some Americans, we've had some Australians, but we've not had a representative from Singapore or from Asia. And so today we do, which I'm so excited about. So Sin is with us today. Hi, Sin.
Hi, Sin.
Hello. Hi. Thanks for having me. I feel like I should be flying the Singapore flag.
No, yeah, I know.
We should have a proud moment for Singapore.
Yeah. But let me do a little like how we know each other, and then I'll throw to you to tell us a little bit about your journey. So Sin and I worked together when I was leading Asia Pac Comms for Salesforce, and Sin worked for our agency. And she was just an incredible agency partner. But where we kind of worked really closely was we had one of our team members in-house go on mat leave, and I was trying to figure out kind of how to cover that role, and we didn't have a formal mat leave cover. And so I sat down with the Rice team, which was where Sin was working, and kind of said, I need some help. I need to figure out what this looks like. And we ended up bringing Sin sort of semi in-house. She was still doing all her other client stuff, but she came in-house and was sort of my partner in crime for Singapore, and really kind of held it all together for us while our wonderful team member went on mat leave. So we worked really closely together and just became a really good team. And I always, if I need advice about Singapore, I'll just WhatsApp Sin and be like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? So that's Sin. I'm so excited she's agreed to come on the podcast. And Sin, why don't you kind of tell us, how did you get into comms? What's your background? In-house agency, give us the juice on your career.
Yeah. So, I was listening to the episode with Ebina, and she said that she wanted to be a journalist. That was me. When I went into uni, I actually had to go for an interview because my grades weren't that great. So I had to do a screening interview, and they asked me, why do I want to get into comms? And I was like, I want to become a journalist. Like, I want to go into war zones. That's actually what I said.
Oh, wow.
At that time. It didn't happen. I actually ended up studying broadcast. So I majored in broadcast and film. I did a lot of productions in school, like scripts, studying films. Like, I really enjoyed that. But I guess I did so many internships during my college life that I got a bit burned out on the production life. Opportunity came out with an agency, to do a grad internship, and I just never looked back.
Yeah,
since. Wow. So I did agency for a number of years. And like many agency people, you wonder what the in-house life looks like. Again, there was an opportunity. I just been very lucky at every stage of my career that I met really good people and mentors who just kept connecting me to opportunities, opening doors. So I went in-house and I did regional comms for like 2 tech companies, American tech companies. I got a chance to travel everywhere around the world. It was back pre-COVID when traveling everywhere is still a thing. I guess it is now.
In its heyday, really, though. I feel like tech companies are really throwing money at it at one point.
Yeah, there was a time where it was like, you want to go here? Sure, go for it.
Yeah. I think on my first in the first 3 months of my first in-house job, I went to at least 5 locations, and one of them was Dominican Republic.
Oh, wow.
Dominican Republic. Yeah. So I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. So as a young PR person like you, it's very exciting.
Yeah.
I did that for a number of years, and then I got pregnant. I think the first kid really threw me off. Like, oh my God, I can't do this traveling anymore. I was bringing him everywhere with me because I was still breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So that was hard, and I just kept going and going. At some point, so I appointed Rice as my agency in my second in-house job. Because I knew James Brescher from many years ago. We still stay in touch. Obviously went through the RFP process and all that. I got to work with Rise, and then I realized, oh my God, I miss the agency life.
Yeah.
Yeah, just the kind of the buzz, the
Yeah.
variety. In-house is really good for like seeing impact up close, as the both of you know. You're really
Mm.
diving deep into one business.
Yeah.
But I think I'm just an agency person at heart. I think it depends on what you want. Like I like the variety. I like the whole camaraderie when you like, when you win a piece of courage and you're like, oh my
Mhm.
God. And when
Yeah.
you don't, it's like, oh my God, together. So the team kind of chemistry, I just feel like you get that in an agency. And of course, new business, right? Like, you know that what you're doing at the agency directly impacts the bottom line. So you
Mhm.
feel a sense of ownership. You want to drive that growth. Yeah, I mean, on both, I'm glad to have both sides because having client perspective has really helped me tremendously coming back to agency life.
Yeah, I think it shows for you, Sin, that you have worked in-house. And I think, we talk a lot about this with like, agency for life or in-house. And it's kind of like, I think a blend of both is really helpful for agency people if you can sort of dip in and then dip back out. Because I do think you got our world very well, and sometimes that can be hard for agency, and vice versa. It's hard if people have only ever worked in-house to understand agency. So I do think that has helped you having that mix of experience.
I think it takes
Yeah.
such a special breed of person to be able to do both well. Like, I think if
Mm.
you were to do in-house and start there and then go to agency at a senior level, I think your head would explode and fall off. Like, it's just so much to like, you have to be
Mm.
hyper organized. You have to be able to like compartmentalize with your clients and kind of jump around.
Yeah.
And then also, just being able to understand the ins and outs of the business really well if you were always agency and then went in-house. Like, I just find that would be so challenging one way or the other. So hats off to you, Sin. We think you're awesome.
Well, I don't know if I did the in-house bit very well or the agency bit very well, but I'm certainly learning. Like, I think the good thing about being an agency is that you're forced to learn, right, and keep up
Yeah.
at every stage. And I think it's just, yeah, like I said, I'm just very lucky to have like, good mentors at the start of my career because they showed me that agency culture can be kind, which, agency life doesn't have the best rep in the world. So I try to pay that forward now. And regarding the whole in-house experience, I think that's why we try to get secondment opportunities for our staff now because, like, both of you have mentioned on one of the episodes, really valuable to just be
Mm.
in the office with your client and know what kind of pressure they're under, know what kind of expectations or stakeholders they have.
Yeah.
It really means a lot to the account, the relationship.
Yeah, I agree. And we've done that. I mean, you came kind of formally, in-house to cover for mat leave, but we tried to do that, I think, across Rice in general when you're our agency to sort of get people in a couple of days a week. I think it's really valuable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you agency for life now, or do you think you'll ever switch
Am I allowed to say that here? No,
back?
I think I'm
Absolutely. Yeah, you just have to say, yes, I'm agency for life.
I am agency for life for sure.
Okay, great.
That's not to say I will. I mean, to be very honest, like I may not stay in comms forever, but if I ever leave comms, it wouldn't, to go to another agency or in-house.
Mm.
I'll probably
Yeah.
leave the industry entirely and try something new. But yeah, I am not going anywhere.
I
Yeah.
always think about that too. People are like, "Do you always think you want to be in comms?" And I'm like, if I was not in comms, I would probably like be a farmer or like something completely different. Not a farmer, that's a bad example, but like just absolute career pivot.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like
yeah,
my answer is always yes. I'll always be in comms. Is that so sad? I'm like
and
forever.
and that's okay. That's great. Yeah, we need more people like you.
Oh God, that's depressing. I'm gonna have to figure out a new pivot. Maybe I don't want to be a farmer though, so definitely not.
Even
Um,
just, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to go down that road. I'm like, we're off track.
we're off
Sin,
track.
tell me, like, with clients, if you're agency for like, what's your ideal client work look like?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first answer that comes to my mind is my favorite client work is never about the work. It's
Mm.
always about the client.
Yeah.
So favorite client work is when the client is great to work with, and you have a great team behind it. So it makes the whole process much more enjoyable. I mean, I've done everything from like I've done a media briefing for a data analytics company. that's helping a matchmaking agency match couples, you know. And
Oh,
I've also
fun.
launched a shop on Orchard Road for one of the big sporting brands,
Yeah.
which I shall not name. You mentioned it in one of your podcasts. So it's the work is very varied. But at the end of the day, it's always the people, right, that you work with and how you enjoy the process.
Yeah. I think comms people are such people that makes everything so important. Like, I don't think people actually think about the team from the outside perspective, but really it's the people that make work. That's always what people talk about, I feel like.
I think you're right, Sin. It's like the work is the work, but if the people are great, then it kind of doesn't matter the actual PR work that you're doing and what you're pitching and all that stuff. You're willing to go that extra mile because you like the client and it's good work and they're good people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the skills are quite transferable, right? I mean, obviously, depending on the kind of industry or client that you're working with, you may need very deep expertise or knowledge about the sector, but the basics are true for everything. Like a good pitch is a good pitch, right? Like, you know, the good client servicing skills are the same throughout every client. So, and I actually, that's what I try to tell people, right? Like coming to an agency, you learn so many things that you can bring to other jobs and roles in the future. If you ever want to get out of comms, you still be great at project management. You still be good at like, you know, building relationships. So yeah, I mean, I think there's something good to be taken away from every experience, even if it's a bad experience.
What makes a good client to you, Sin?
I guess it will be the same kind of things we ask of ourselves. So we have this like three things that we always encourage people to do. It's to always do things better, to do things differently, and to be a good partner. And actually, it's interesting because Finn has a philosophy of work hard, play nice, which kind of sums up what we, you know, advocate for quite well. And, you know, we look for that in the client, right? The same, you know, someone who will be a good partner to us, someone who could, you know, be open to doing things differently, to always looking at doing things better. And we have had, you know, we have really long lasting relationships with clients at Rise. And when you look at those relationships, it's always the same. Like we are an extension of the team. They trust us, we trust them, we can have open conversations and we try things together. So over the years, we just evolve and adapt together. And I think that's what makes for a great, you know, client relationship.
Yeah, I agree. So I want to get to kind of, you have worked on, well, you've worked for your own in-house, a lot of multinational or American brands. You also work on a lot of multinational clients now. Tell us a little bit about kind of how that is working with multinational clients. Do they get what it's like to work in Asia? What are some of the kind of, what do they get right and what do they get wrong about doing comms in the Asian market?
Yeah. I think in terms of what they get right, budgets are often better with multinationals. I mean, that's a reality. Not always, you know, it depends on which markets are their priority. They bring resources, you know, they have spokespeople, they have like processes in place, they have great global stories. So those are often like, you know, things that it's good to tap on. They have a network, right? Like we often get all hands agency calls with like, you know, the other partners in the world, and it's helpful to learn and share content and best practices. I guess the biggest miss would be when they're trying to copy and paste the stories in Asia, and assuming that Asia is just one homogeneous region. As you probably know, I get that. I still get that a lot, even today. The other thing is assuming that it's cheaper to do business in Asia and therefore budgets should be lower, which is really not the case, especially for a market like Singapore, but even for like the Philippines, Indonesia, it's no longer, you know, it's for a service like comms, you're looking for good comms work, it's not cheap. It's not necessarily cheap. So, I mean, I think that part of it, it's just, it's something to be, you know, addressed. I guess something else would be not actually investing in the market as a business. And expecting comms to do all the magic. I mean, comms can do some magic, but not all. So local markets are looking for investments, right? Like hiring, partnerships. And if you just go into the market and say, oh, we've launched this great product in the States and we just bring it here, great, but what else are you doing in the market? Like, do you have a team there? Sometimes we have clients, multinationals come to us and say, oh, we don't have an office there, but we want to do something anyway.
Yeah.
So, hold up, take a step back. Do we have the right things in place before you do? It's now the right time? Perhaps not.
And that's not an easy conversation I can imagine to have with clients as well. Like, because of course you want to say yes and you want to help them out in that market. But I think that's such an important point to make, is that you need to be investing in the market that you want to be speaking to in some capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
We see that. I've seen that in-house as well. I think everything you hit on is like 100% right, in that, like, cost of business, there's a perception that it's different, and that it's cheaper. And often these are smaller markets. So there's also like this challenge of kind of, on paper, these markets might be delivering less revenue because they're in growth mode. And so then from a budget perspective, it's like making those decisions. But at the same time, I think there's this perception that you can do things, cheaper or more reasonably. I think that, like, the kind of, we've just done this in the US, can you put this out in and then in Asia without specifying what are the core markets and then the differences that exist in those markets, and just not acknowledging that. So I think you've hit the nail on the head in terms of like some of the challenges I've seen. So it's a little bit sad to see that that's still happening a little bit, but hopefully it's sort of, the tide is turning a little bit.
I think it's getting better. I mean, many of them are more appreciative of like local nuances, understanding that different cultures are like different. Like, just as an example, like when you get on an all hands agency call with agency partners in Asia, it's often quite hard, I think, to get people to speak up or ask questions. And I think can be frustrating for multinationals at first if they're not used to, how things are done here. But I think it just depends on the person, the market, and the culture, right? People take time to warm up, and they like to channel feedback and ideas in a different format. So there's some adjustments and getting used to and embracing that there are differences.
What would you recommend to say if I was your client in the US and the team was a bit quiet at first, like what would you recommend for me as that leader to kind of bring enthusiasm out of the team, or like get them to engage more?
Yeah, I think a couple of things, I suppose, because I was on the client side as well, and I remember being on like calls with agencies when I would say something and then they'll be like, hold up, and they will go back in the background, mute themselves and discuss, and then come back to me. So with calls will take twice the time, right? But I realized that the face-to-face interaction is really important. Like if you've never met them before in person, it's quite hard to kind of build that connection. So if you can like afford and invest time to make a trip down, do a meeting, that's often helpful. I mean, the other thing I would say is let me get on a one-on-one call with this agency, because sometimes they don't like to get feedback in a group setting. And it's easier to do that. And it's just, making sure like it's face, right? Like making sure that you give them constructive feedback, but not putting them on the spot.
Yeah.
I think that's really good advice, Sin. And I think some of this cultural nuance, I just don't think a lot of people learn it. And it took me a while to learn it as well. I think having someone who can help you navigate that, and that was definitely like, you've been that helpful to me, and having people in-house in my team who sat in those markets. But like face to face, I completely agree. And if preferable in Singapore, go to lunch. Like I reckon I learned more about the agency and ideas at our lunches than on those whip calls, and it was just a really good learning for me. The team sort of came out of their shells a bit more, and you had that real human connection, which quite frankly works across most markets, but I think in particular in Asia.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember being in Korea and like, in a meeting, people are just very formal and conservative. Went out for dinner and drinks, everything changed. It's the same thing in Japan as well. Like people just really open up when they have like over a meal and over drinks. It's a bit easier in Singapore, I think, because it's a very different market. But I think it's just making sure you're tailoring your approach for the market.
So keeping on Singapore, what is the talent pool like? Is it hard to find people at the moment? Is it easy to find people? How are you finding it at the agency and just more broadly from a comms perspective?
It's complex. I don't think there's a one answer for this. Sometimes it's easier and sometimes it's harder. But overall, I think it is still. So I feel like I don't know if you agree, but there's a bit of a hustle culture in Singapore. Like people
Yeah.
work. I mean, we're known for that in the world, like extended working hours. People are proud of it. And I'm trying to like, no, we don't have to just because everyone else is doing
Oh, work
it.
is hard.
Yeah.
Like, what if everybody just chilled out just a little?
Yeah, exactly. So I think I don't know, like I said before, like I think maybe PR and comms doesn't have the best rep. Like we're known to be one of the most stressful professions in the world, right? And in Singapore, there are people want to do like, I don't know, law, engineering, medical degree. So getting people to be interested, I think we have some work to do. That said, I think there is talent for sure. It's a matter of retaining them and keeping them in the industry. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think I just think like for the younger folks as well, I get the sense that like, they're looking for more purpose and meaning. And for them, sometimes like in an agency, you're working on clients where they have very clear business market objectives. And sometimes they find themselves, I mean, I find myself asking myself sometimes like, well, what does this mean for the world? Like, how does it help people? And, when you start thinking about all those things, it's really like, it's important to look at the bigger picture, I think, and not just like each client, but the agency, where it's going, and how we can help shape this agency and the people inside it. So I think if we can nail that, then we can attract and retain more talent in the community.
And what about the balance? Because obviously Singapore's a big expat market as well. I don't kind of know what I know a while back it was like felt like there were a lot of Australians and a lot of UK PR people going to Singapore to work. I don't know if it's still the same. How do you find that balance of like expat talent versus local talent, and kind of making sure you do have that mix, I guess, or do you have a mix?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think it's changed a lot over the years. When I first joined in the industry, every time you go to a pitch or a bidding and you have to introduce yourself, like I'm often the last one because, they go by hierarchy. But I'm always the first one to say I'm from Singapore.
Yeah.
I'm Singaporean. Because they'll be like, oh, where are you based? I mean, where are you from? No, I'm Singaporean. I'm based in Singapore. So that has changed a lot over the years. Like, I think at Rise, we're still very diverse. Like, I mean, the last count we have about 10 nationalities just within Singapore. But I would say it's changed a lot. Like we try to hire locals. I mean, the government has made it harder for expats to work here because of regulations. Yeah. So, but I think it's good because it's good to always look to local talent first, obviously. They are here in the market, they understand the market. But I'm not exactly opposed to like, we have to hire a local. It's about who gets the job done, who's the right fit. And I think diversity, having that global perspective, especially in a market like Singapore, is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm glad it's sort of shifted a bit. Because I know there was a time where I felt like I was looking for agencies in markets and half the team were expats. And I was like, but that's what I am. Like, I mean, not an expat, I'm not living in Singapore, but as in, I don't need an Australian I need someone who understands the market, right?
And most of them have left, the country altogether. And I think there's still a lot to do though in terms of like inclusion, because it's not just about expats and locals, but within the local community, Singapore is such a multicultural city, right? I think we have more to do in terms of like, making sure that we have more minorities, ethnicities, but even just like also, I guess, I don't know if you feel like there's a gender imbalance in the comms industry.
Oh, 100%. Like Seamus is the only person I know that's a male.
I'm the male on my team for a long time.
Yeah.
still has not come on the pod, but he'll get here.
We'll get him.
Yeah, definitely, Sin. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I think that feels fairly global to me. Yeah.
Yeah, but the irony is that I think there's still a lot of men at the leadership positions, right? So there may be more women in the industry, but at the board, sitting at the board is different.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit more work to be done there for sure. And I would say even in the market like Singapore, you still struggle. I think women still struggle a little bit with that power
Yeah.
play
Yeah.
with men. Yeah, and I think it's a concern. Like, this week, we had a request from someone in the media, a male contact in the media who tried to organize this party for young female PR professionals. It's a pool party.
Oh.
Super dodgy. And I just think like, gosh, we need to call some of these things out because people don't tend to, we don't do that in Singapore. Like, we seldom call things out because we're just not, it's just not in our nature to do so. I just seen so much in my career, like, being on a call with a prospective male client who, basically ignored me to speak to my colleague who's male. It still happens. Like, it's still, a problem.
Whoa, that's depressing.
I didn't mean to drop that bombshell on you.
Pool party has really thrown me. I'm like, wow. Well, call it out, Sin. Power to you. Call it out, I say. I love that about you, by the way, that you're well aware of some of these issues and are not afraid to talk about them, because I do think you're right. And I say this with deep respect, but I think from a cultural perspective, it is harder, from what I've witnessed, for people to call things out and to be a bit more, bold on some of these challenging issues. And I understand why, but I think it's not going to change unless senior people in comms positions start to say, like, this isn't how we want the comms industry to be in Singapore. We want it different. And we want to protect our young women entering it. And then also, put them on some board seats and some senior roles.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's a good segue. The pool party is a great segue into what is the media like in Singapore. But just, I think, more from a storytelling perspective, do you see anything kind of unique to Singapore that's different from what you've seen in other markets?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of it is probably universal truths, like for every market, like, journalists are time staff, their relationships are important, but they're ultimately very practical, right? If they don't have the time, they're not interested in the story, they're not going to run it. So it's still dependent on a good pitch. But you probably already heard this to death. Like, the media pool in Singapore is very small. It's very small. And so we don't do press conferences, for instance, as a rule of thumb. Like, you do a press conference, you expect like 30 media to turn out. That's not going to happen. It might happen. It will happen in Indonesia. It will happen in, say, Thailand, in Vietnam. Like, I've been in a media briefing in Vietnam once where we had 45 journalists turn up. Whoa. So, the kind of numbers is just not going to happen in Singapore. So I think sometimes when multinationals or, brands from overseas, like in China, for instance, come to us and say, we want to do a press conference and we want like 100 people to attend. And we're like, no, sorry, we can't do that. And no one will tell you they can't do that. Yeah. So it's really important to just focus on like, smaller group media briefings, one-on-ones, quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And I mean, because journalists are just so time-starved, you need your pitches to be very short and sharp. Like, gone are the days where you send like a one-page pitch to them. They just don't have the time to read it, right? But I also think like journalists move around a lot. Like, probably true for every market now. Like a journalist today could become a client tomorrow. So it's actually more important to make sure like, you're investing in the relationship for the long run. It's not just about the story today, but like the relationship will go a long way.
Yeah. Are you seeing that more often now, of like the journalists coming in-house to to companies and doing content or things like that?
Yes, yeah, I see that a lot actually. So sometimes it can be a bit discouraging because you invested so much time in that relationship with a journalist and oh, they're gone.
I
But
know.
it is what it is.
At one hand, you're like, oh, I'm happy for them. Like, they got a golden ticket almost like into something cool and fun for them. But also you're like, God damn it.
Yeah. That's the good thing about LinkedIn, right? Because you see all these movements and it's also a great way to like stay connected. A lot of the journalists here in Singapore are a lot more active on LinkedIn now because
Oh,
they
that's
have to build
good.
their brand. They have to build their brand there. So, we have to meet them there.
Yeah.
Do you pitch journalists on LinkedIn ever? Or is that not a thing?
Yes.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Tagging them when you put up a post on the coverage.
Huh.
Exactly.
Commenting on their posts. Yeah, it's just little things, right? So media relations is no longer just like picking up the phone or like
Yeah.
taking them out to coffee. You have to connect with them socially.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You got to
Yeah,
give them some love on their own articles and things like that. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So thinking about kind of other markets and like for me, for instance, I moved from the US to Australia and then back. Like the markets are completely different. The way that you work in a comms environment is completely different depending on where you live and kind of how you interact with journalists. Like what advice would you have for people that are living in a different country that potentially want to come to the Asian market? Like what should they know about the market before coming and like how should they study and get ready for interviews locally?
depends on which part of Asia. But maybe I'll just use Singapore as an example.
Yeah.
I
Is
mean,
my
I guess
American showing by just saying Asia as a whole?
Well, it's like
um,
you probably should learn Thai if you go to Thailand.
yeah. Well,
Got
actually,
it.
I've known plenty of people who've gone to Thailand to work without knowing a single word. You just pick it up when you're there,
Oh, I'm
and
sure. Just pick it up, everyone. That's
Pick it up. I think I've been to Thailand quite a few times. I lived in Thailand as a child, and I still can't speak Thai. So
you know what it makes me. Did you guys watch White Lotus? It makes me want to move
no,
to
it's not
Taiwan.
actually. Yeah, Duolingo it.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, no, I think like as long as you're kind of open to learning and don't keep to yourself, go and meet locals, build relationships. Because I think like it's not just for Singapore, right? Anywhere you go, like if you're an expat in a foreign country, you stick to your own community because you find your own community. But I don't think that's always helpful. Like you want to immerse yourself locally, go
Yeah.
to the hawker center to eat, right?
Yeah.
Talk to the aunties and uncles in the neighborhood. I think that's fascinating.
Can you explain for people who don't know the whole concept of aunties and uncles? Can you, because I
Yeah.
think there'll be a few listeners who maybe haven't spent much time in Asia and don't know what you, like they're not your aunties and uncles. Who are they?
I never even thought about that. Like to me, it's just
Yeah.
so natural. I think it's a show of respect. Like in the Asian culture, when you see someone elderly, even if the person is not related to you, you call him or her auntie and uncle. So it's quite common to say like if I go to a store, food store to buy something, and I will say, "Hi, auntie, how are you?" Or
Yeah.
in the Chinese language or something, or like, "Oh, uncle, can I help you with this?" And they don't mind it. I mean, if someone called me an auntie, I'll be quite annoyed.
Like,
Because
I'm not old
hey,
enough.
I'm not an auntie yet.
I love that part of the Asian culture. And it took me a little while, like, but I started after going to Singapore quite a few times. I started calling the taxi drivers uncle, like saying thanks, uncle, and that sort of thing. And it was like, yeah, but I think a lot of people don't know that and know what, yeah. So thank you for explaining that. But I think that's a good example of like a nuance that exists, and you might hear it if you're traveling
Yeah.
there and not know what it is.
I've worked with someone who came to Asia for the first time before to do comms, like in an agency. And what she did was to immediately set up meetings with journalists, like just asking them out for coffee chats, just meeting people. because I think that's like the best way to straight away, get deep into it. Because it's so different. Every market, like, it's the journalists are the ones, like, once you speak to a journalist, you kind of get a sense of what the market looks like, right?
Yeah.
So that would be the first tip I will recommend.
Yeah, it's a
I
good
love
tip.
that.
Can I ask a really stupid question, just for the people out in the audience? So,
Oh, sure, for the audience. Yeah.
there's air quotes happening.
Yeah, air quotes are happening right now for the audience / Boysen.
Yeah. So I know this is my dumb in public. So I know that, like, in Singapore, for example, if you were American and you're thinking about working or even just like coordinating internationally across Asian markets, the first thing you think about is like the language barrier. But when I moved to Australia, I was super surprised to see that like most countries in Asia speak English as like a business language. Like everyone speaks really good English. Like I guess what countries in Asia use like English as a business language that you can think of off the top of your head? And like, where would you recommend local language like spokespeople for the other country?
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been asked before, like, you can speak really good English, like, and you sound American. I was like, what? Really? I sound American? Um, in Singapore, it's because of the legacy and the way the system is set up. Like everyone has to be, well, not everyone, like, people are encouraged to use English as their first language. And your other language is your mother tongue. Have you heard that? Mother tongue?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like second to English. So English is really very important here. In terms of which markets, it really depends on the media you are interested in engaging, because in different markets there are like English language media and then there's local language media. And in a country like India, there are many local languages. So it depends on the market, the media you're engaging, the cities you're interested in. But I guess as a broad stroke, obviously in countries like Japan and Korea, local language is really important. But it's actually okay to have an English speaking spokesperson. You just need to factor in interpretation, right? Simultaneous or consecutive. Like Hong Kong, Manila, Thailand, English will be fine. But if you're sending out a press release and you want to get into local language media, then you obviously need to translate it. Same thing for Indonesia. Vietnam is quite important as well. And I think it's sometimes not just a show, not just the language, but the show of like local commitment, right?
Yeah.
If you have a local spokesperson who can speak their local language, it lands differently when
I agree.
compared to when a global spokesperson coming in.
I
right?
completely agree. You can get away with it, but I think if you're trying to really create a sense that the business is committed to that market, and some people, you're not ready yet, sometimes you don't have it. But when you do, having a local leader with local language capability in some of these markets just goes a long way to showing, that you're committed and you've got respect for that local market. And I do feel like, I know when we got a Thai leader for Salesforce, it just changed our relationship with the media a little bit, just deepened it a little bit more because we had that local leader who could speak to them in Thai, and we did briefings in Thai, and it did go. We could still get away with it before that, but it just changed the relationship a little bit.
Yeah. Say like also pound on your local agency partner to advise what works best. Because they would know, and they're also the ones who can help with any kind of like challenges and understanding. I mean, even in Singapore, like we have a Chinese publication, Zaobao, and they are mostly fine with English. Like you can brief them in English, you can send them English materials, but it might come to you and say, what is the Chinese version, like translation of this company's name or this spokesperson's name, and you got to get all those things like ready in place. And if you go to a market like China, if you're not local, it's nice to have the Chinese version of your name ready, because they appreciate it, because it's a sign of respect as well that you care.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, just having that ready, just so that that that's something that would good advice, Sin.
If you need a translator, like if you have, say you're, doing a interview with a Japanese journalist, like Do journalists bring in the translator, or do you have to provide the translator? Like, what does that activity look like?
Japan.
No. Can I?
Uh,
Give me an excuse.
Normally it would be the agency who should
Okay.
be factoring that in. I guess everywhere else, like, you try to minimize the work that the journalists need to do, right? So
Yeah,
you
that's
put
true.
all those things in place for them. Um, yeah, that would be the case in Japan.
Fascinating. I feel like we could talk about this kind of stuff because I just think it's really important for people, especially as businesses grow and Asia becomes such a big part of people's businesses and their growth strategy. Just understanding it a little bit better would be good for everyone. What are you seeing in terms of like shifts in the comms landscape? We've obviously seen a lot of layoffs, big agencies in the US, a little bit here in Australia, media layoffs. Like, are you seeing that in Singapore at all?
We are, unfortunately, on every side. And I think it's still a very unpredictable environment, very
Mm,
volatile.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say things are great, but every time you see things looking up, it just goes to shit again.
Yeah.
So, I think it's just a matter of like riding the wave and
mm,
looking at always pivoting, like pivot, like
Mhm.
what else is there? Like what can we do? How do we protect our people? I guess I've been lucky, like we've been lucky at Rise. We have like, long-term retainers and relationships, and that has been like, super useful for us.
yeah.
And also the type of industries you are. Sorry, I'm losing my voice.
It's okay.
Type of industries that you typically cover. Some industries are more resilient than others, in
Yeah.
times like that. Um, it's just a rising cost of talent, like
Yeah.
doing business everywhere. And in
Yes.
Singapore, it's just so expensive, right, to do anything.
For everything. Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
everything. And at the same time, our budgets are being cut.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's definitely challenging. So we're looking at different like areas of offerings, which we already have, but things are picking up. Like for instance, we do quite a fair bit of work in like auditing, insights, and research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually that has been quite interesting for us because we've landed projects with like pretty big global brands. It's not just for external comms, it can be for employee comms, it can be
Yeah.
for very specialized part
Mhm.
of the business. So I think we just need to be quite kind of creative and agile in looking at where the opportunities lie.
Mm,
Um, I mean, I guess as for independent agencies, it's not the easiest because
yeah.
Yeah.
you're running lean, you don't tap into local resources, which is why we integrated with Fin partners. And
Yeah.
already that has been paying off because, we can tap into the network and we're getting leads, right, from other
Yeah.
offices around the world. So sometimes it's really just about doing the right thing at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you find outside of just traditional media, like, are there opportunities that are starting to come up, like in the market around, like Substacks and that kind of thing? Like, what are the other channels that you guys are starting to poke around at?
yeah. Actually, interestingly, I feel like there is a shift back to basics, like good old earned media relations,
Uh-huh.
has become more important than ever. I think I think what's driving this is this like thirst or desire to kind of hold on to that credibility, the brand credibility, right? And nothing beats a media in doing that. So when we get RFPs or requests, there's always like basic questions now. Like you think about it, that you thought people don't ask this anymore because it's a given. But like, how good is your media network?
Yeah.
What kind of relationships do you have? And we really, really go deep into like each journalist, each relationship, and how to tailor that approach.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I think in terms of other services, like I said, like I think the insights and research piece is quite interesting. Well, we actually have like a research lead in the agency now
Mm.
who does this sort of projects. And I think internal comms, employee comms, also is coming up as more and more important.
Yeah.
Especially given the world that we live in. It's whilst there are layoffs, at the same time, companies want to hold on to the talent they have. And they're also trying to hire for the, specialized functions, specific skill sets. So there's still a lot of work to be done around employee comms. And I think, it's a growth sector, growth area for us.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think in the past, traditionally internal comms was sort of kept quite close in-house. And I feel like now there is this move to sort of take the model that external's been using for a while and leverage agencies.
I hadn't even thought about an agency for that. And it's so funny because like I think about consultants coming in and helping with internal comms, but I'd never really thought about an agency doing that. I don't know why.
Yeah, we've done some interesting projects where we've looked like the employee comms lead would ask us to look at our newsletters, look at our employee newsletters, what are we doing right, what are we not doing right. But at the same time, look externally, what are other companies doing with their employee newsletters and comms? And blending all these things together, interviewing stakeholders internally, what do they want to see? And bringing that all together to come out with like a strategy and approach. I think, like Katie, Boysen, is the outside perspective that companies value sometimes. We're also auditing an intranet now for a company. We're auditing their intranet to see what's working and what's not, and looking at best practices outside as well.
Wow.
And I think it's really about how to help, like, these clients succeed internally with their stakeholders.
Yeah, which is no different really to, the model that exists for external to some extent. And you're right. I think internal comms is sort of back on the map again, in navigating all of these changes and all of this stuff that's happening. It's sort of never been more important for companies to get that right. Yeah.
What do you think? Should we go into dumb and private?
Yes, let's do it. I was like, what's this little dance?
You guys can't see, but I was doing a little dance. I was excited about dumb and private.
Are you dumb in private? Do you have one?
Of course. Oh my God, so many. I couldn't decide which one to pick because there's so many. So when I get off work mode, I really get off work mode because I think it's important to keep my sanity.
Yeah.
And I become like mom mode.
Yeah.
But this is when I get off every mode. I just become like myself. So I'm terrible at directions. I'm really, really terrible at directions. I don't drive. I don't have a driving license. And I think it's for the better.
Have you ever driven?
I've taken driving lessons. I've gone for exams. I failed 4 times. Everyone around me know the story. It's incredibly expensive and difficult to get a license in Singapore.
True. That's not an excuse. I feel like you wouldn't be driving if you were somewhere else. But you're right.
Just made that up.
Like very expensive. Cars are very expensive. I mean, we do thankfully own one, but my husband drives. I don't drive. Because I think it's for the better. Like, I'm not going to kill anyone.
For the better time.
Yeah. So just last week, so this is how bad I am with directions. I got on the wrong bus in the opposite direction. And I ended up in like a place in Singapore, like Yishun, when I was supposed to go to Orchard Road. So, that's just me. Like, I think the problem is I just like look at my phone all the time and I'm texting, I'm messaging, I'm checking emails. And that's not a good idea when you're trying to find where you need to go.
I mean, most people might get on a different number bus. Not many people would get on the bus going the other way to where they need to go.
Then how often do you take this bus? Like, is this a bus you normally take and you've gotten on that absolute wrong one?
Yes. I take this bus very often. So yeah, I'm just not great at directions. I'm trying to think now, like, how is this going to affect my work and clients' confidence in me? I guess not really.
I mean, in Singapore, to be fair, you can get a grab pretty easily, and the driver knows where they're going. Thank God.
Yeah. Also, like, you also just admitted that this is when you're clocked out of work, so
so you're okay.
This is just normal thin brain time.
Yeah, I mean, when I plan holidays, you can also call me to get at least one thing wrong because that's, yeah, I don't know, like it's link, I guess, directions, planning
It is linked. I
travel.
was going to say, yeah, I can imagine you booking a hotel in a totally wrong area that you're not supposed to
Yeah,
be.
it's happened before. I've double booked hotels.
Oh my God.
Sin.
Yeah.
See, I feel like there's only so much brain capacity, and like you're very good at what you do professionally. You're then in mum mode, and then there's nothing left. There's nothing
This is
left.
Yeah,
why
I know.
this is why we do dumb and private. Like I think there
Yeah.
should be some type of research study that looks into communications professionals around this like
This
situation.
phenomenon.
Yes,
Yeah.
this phenomenon that's happening.
Yeah, and
Boysen,
as
do
women,
you
it's
have
still
one?
like every.
Go ahead, Sin. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, as women, it's all the more worse because, we get our periods every month,
Oh,
and 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 every time I get it, I feel really resentful. Like I just like why? Like it's so unfair that we have to be good at what we do. We have to be good at home, and then we have to get this shit every month. Like it's not fair.
oh my
true.
God. Yeah, I agree. Except I just become full of rage. Full of rage.
Even more than normal, I feel
Even
like.
more than normal. I mean, yeah, there's a level at which I always operate, a level of rage, but it becomes so I'm with you, Sin. It's what is our life? Boy, do you have a dumb in private? I feel like you do. I feel like you're on the edge of your seat.
I really do. You can just see the glimmer in my eye. It's twitching actually, just thinking about it. So, we sold our house a couple of months ago in February and moved, and I we had because of the way that it all closed, like we overpaid on our escrow and on our mortgage, and so we were expecting a refund check. Scotty was like, why have we not gotten our refund check yet? And I was like, oh, I don't know. Like we just moved, maybe change of address. Maybe I should call the dudes and like have them resend the check because yes, in America, the check gets mailed to your house. Banking system, it's a whole different topic. So we're like, okay, so I'm trying to get on the phone. The automated like thing isn't working. We can't get through to anyone. It's hung up on us twice. As you can imagine, like Scott is enraged. And he was like, well, Katie, I know that you just like went and picked up all of our mail that was held at the post office like while we did the switch of like
Yeah.
moving. Like, have you opened any of those? And I was like, no. They'd been sitting, the checks have been sitting, $4,000 worth of checks had been sitting on our counter unopened. And I was just going to throw them away for like 2.5 months.
Do you know
Oh
what?
my
I can
God.
relate though. I don't really look at the mail. Like
No.
Yeah.
that's someone else's job.
No.
But
So,
wait, you have to go to the post office to pick up your mail. It doesn't
well,
get
no,
sent to your house.
not all the time. It was because
Just
we'd
when you're
had the
moving.
mail held, and then the new house that we
Oh,
moved to did not have a mailbox yet. So, like, they
got
were
it.
holding it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had this huge stack of mail on the counter, and I was like, what? Like, nothing's, everything seems fine. Not thinking that there was the checks in there.
Oh, but it's like surprise money you found
Yeah,
now.
no, I'm like, but positive. You
great.
didn't lose the check. I think you were
Yeah,
going to
perfect.
you didn't do the paperwork properly and there is no check. That's what I thought that was going to go.
Oh no, yeah, no. They'd been there all along, baby.
Should use the money to go to Japan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you text my husband and tell him that? I would love to do that. No, we actually booked a trip to Vegas. We're gonna go see the Eagles at the Sphere.
Fun.
Nice.
This is fun.
Yeah, so
Nice.
but Japan will be next.
Well, I hope to see you guys here one day.
I know. I'm like, I can't wait to get back up. I'm hoping to get back up in the new year, maybe, for some work stuff. So you
We're
never
still
know.
recording this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're still going, babe.
Well, yes, that's true. We can chat offline on visits and when we're going to come. But Sin, just wanted to say thank you so much for being on the pod. We really appreciate it. And I think some of those insights and learnings, like I learned stuff, and I think a lot of our audience will learn a lot as well.
Yeah, thank you, Sin. We appreciate
Thank you. I just want to say, you guys are amazing for what you're doing here.
Oh.
And yeah, I hope you keep going at it.
We're
We'll
trying.
try.
That was very non-committal.
Yeah.
No, we do have
Alright,
some
thank
great
you.
guests coming up. I think it's just so funny because like life, and like work and everything that thank God we actually like hanging out with the people that we talk to and with each other, because that's what like our moment is every single week to do this. But
Yeah.
no, thank you. That's really kind of you to say.
Thank
Um,
you.
and if anyone has a guest or any ideas or, any topics they want us to cover, please email us at hello@smartandpublicpod. I know there's a few people in our inbox right now that we need to get back to. We'll get back to you today. I promise. It's on my checklist. But we also follow us on Instagram, on TikTok. You can find us at Smart and Public Pod, and then anywhere that you get your podcasts, like Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music. Please like, rate, listen, review, subscribe, all those good things. It really helps us out. And we'll chat to you next week.
Thanks
Thanks
everybody.
everyone.
Bye.